Hey, what's going on? Ryan here with Intersection Records, and we're talking about the new single by Dolly Parton featuring Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney, Let It Be. She's got a covers album coming out for her rock album, and on the 18th of August of this year, they released the single Let It Be, again featuring Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. And this is technically the first charting single featuring two former Beatles. So Billboard is saying that they're technically correct in saying that Dolly Parton's cover of Let It Be, which features McCartney and Starr, was the first time two former Beatles have shared credited billing with one another and entered the charts since the Beatles broke up. The Beatles had over 60 chart singles, and the Beatles have collaborated with each other on chart singles all through their solo career. So even though they broke up in 1970, their collaborations spanned, really their whole solo careers. Here's some of the examples of that. Cold Turkey, that John Lennon wanted to be on Abbey Road, was rejected by Paul McCartney. That song featured Ringo Starr on drums. It went to number 30 in 1969 on Lennon's first solo album. Instant Karma, that also featured George Harrison on guitar. That went to number 3 in 1970. Also featured Alan White on drums and Billy Preston and Yoko Ono, produced by Phil Spector. My Sweet Lord, Isn't It a Pity, went to number 1 in 1970 off of All Things Must Pass, triple album by George Harrison that featured Ringo Starr on drums. It Don't Come Easy really was a song that established Ringo Starr's solo career. That featured George Harrison. And that was in 1971. Same thing with Photograph. Ringo Starr, again featuring George Harrison in 73. That went to number 1 also. Ringo Starr was actually the most successful solo artist of all the Beatles. He had more number 1 songs and more hits than any of those guys, including Wings or John Lennon or anything that George Harrison did. You're 16 went to number 1 also. Ringo Starr featuring Paul McCartney. A little creepy about a man in his 30s singing about a 16-year-old. But again, it tops the charts in 73. On the Nielsen album, Harry Nilsson featured Ringo Starr and George Harrison on a Daybreak of went to 39 on the charts in 74. You're Only and You're Alone went to number 6. Again, Ringo Starr featuring John Lennon, 1974, off the LP Goodnight Vienna. George Harrison featuring Paul McCartney, or with Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr all those years ago, went to number 2 in 81 after John Lennon died. Again, this is only billed though as George Harrison, so not billed as with Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. That's about as close to a reunion as we get there. Again, just going to number 2, just being credited to Harrison. Whack My Brain off the Ringo Starr album featuring George Harrison. Take It Away was a song off Tug of War album in 82 by Paul McCartney featuring Ringo Starr. Lastly, When We Were Fab, George Harrison with Ringo Starr on drums from the Cloud 9 album produced by Jeff Lynne. Anyway, check out the cover of Let It Be with Dolly Parton featuring Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. It's good. It's kind of a holy grail song that I kind of feel like you can't cover that song because it's just so good. It's so iconic. But Dolly's good. Dolly's record's going to be really good. She's got songs featuring Rob Halford from Judas Priest, amongst other famous rock stars. Check out my channel, subscribe to my channel. We do shows every single day. We're going to review Guns N' Roses this weekend. We're going to review the Pretenders concert. They're opening for Guns N' Roses. We got a Jethro Tull show coming up. I'm going to highlight some albums coming up, some forgotten kind of albums by bands that are famous, kind of their stepchild albums, if you will. Anyway, see you later.